Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. And it is time for our silver market expert, Dave Kranzler, who is joining me live on the show. Without any other panelists today, this one is going to be all Dave. Maybe after I'm done with the intro, I could just let you take it away, and I'll sit back and absorb the knowledge. But it's great to see you, sir. How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself? I had a good day shorting Tesla today, so
Oh yeah, how is Tesla looking today? I haven't checked it lately, but
it's closed down 4.8% and over 5% from its pre-market trading levels after Musk tried to use the Bitcoin pump job again.
yeah, well, he certainly does some unusual things, and obviously a lot happening in the world that gets a little bizarre these days. But let me pull up our silver chart so we can dig right in there. I'd love to get your take on this ship that's like clogging the seas of the Middle East right now too. We'll touch in on that, but here we are, Dave. $25.10 silver on the Kitco chart, which I know you don't like, but is what I have up here today. See a nice spoof right down there yesterday. And I'm curious, I know your fans have been wanting to know as well, but it's been a pretty wild last 2 months ever since that February 1st and 2nd. I know you weren't as on guard as some others were initially, although as you've seen the bullion reports and the lease rate spike and premiums on wholesale bars go up. And now we hear a lot of reports about Perthman and otherwise. So where do you think we stand, and are we nearing the break point?
Well, it's impossible to know if we're nearing the break point. I mean, unless
That's
you're
that's the answer everyone was hoping for. It's like so precise.
I mean, I'm not going to say the market's, all of a sudden there's going to be a short squeeze tomorrow that's going to drive silver up to 50. There's no way to know because, I mean, there's just no way to get good data on inventories, et cetera. In terms of trying to get good data on something, that starts with the massive amount of OTC silver derivatives that are outstanding, right? I mean, there's no way to know how those are structured and how they're set up and positioned without seeing the actual contracts, and we can never get a hold of those. I mean, the COMEX as it is, its reporting is opaque. It's not as bad as the LBMA, but it's still pathetic, and I consider it fortunate that and I don't trust the numbers from the COMEX and the CME, but I consider it fortunate that they show us something. They've certainly moved away from showing us less than they used to show us 15 years ago. So it feels like silver could break. It certainly feels like, even though we're starting to see some 20 and 21 Silver Eagles show back up on Bitcoin dealer inventory reports, it feels like there's a tightness out there. I was worried from the whole get-go of this short silver squeeze movement that at some point the banks were going to exact some retribution on it in the paper market, and that's what we've seen the past couple of weeks.
You could say that. I mean, and speaking of that, it looks like they've used every piece of firepower, every trick possible to basically get out of as many short contracts as possible. Because when we see these moves down, we know people are getting stopped out, and we see a lot of funky things going on with the SLV accounting. I mean, I guess it's hard to say that this is this is the last time and it's about to explode. But this is kind of what I would expect, and for years have thought before it finally goes, you would see something like this, which is not to say that we're definitely at the one where it goes, but I mean, it seems like they just dropped the kitchen sink on the market the last couple of weeks.
I think I think they've dropped as much as they felt they could drop without getting into too much trouble in terms of the availability of physical coming, to supply to the buyers in the Eastern Hemisphere, specifically India and China. But I read that Russia also increased its gold reserves, I think in February. So, I mean, they've got absolute delivery requirements they have to make over there. I mean, if you take delivery under forwards on the LBMA or under futures on the CME, most of the guys who take delivery don't remove the bars. So the bars don't have to be delivered. So the bars can be delivered multiple times over. And I'm sure that's what's going on right now. Where I started to get optimistic that the sector could be squeezed from the retail side. And this is certainly by far the biggest retail push that we've seen in terms of buying silver and gold products from the mint years that I've been doing this. I mean, the avalanche of buying that we saw, that guys like you helped foment, way larger than the avalanche of buying that started occurring in 2008. And so at first I kind of thought maybe a massive physical short squeeze can be initiated at the retail level. But then if you look at what the mint's doing and what the mints are doing around the world, they're basically cutting off supply, right? So, technically the U.S. Mint's supposed to produce as many silver eagles as there is demand, but they get that legal requirement waived all the time when we get shortages like this. And so technically, if the mint wanted to, why it could go to refiners and say, hey, I need more silver blanks to produce my silver eagles. Tell me what price I need to pay in order to get those. And here's a $30 order. Let's start with that, right? But they don't. They just say, no, we're shutting down now, or we're restricting supply. Now, don't forget the U.S. Mint's owned by the U.S. government, as are most of the sovereign mints. In fact, I think all of them are, aren't they? But at any rate, if the U.S. Mint was privatized like they wanted to do with Fannie and Freddie, the U.S. Mint would be able to raise the price that it's willing to pay to refiners, who can raise the price they pay to silver concentrate producers, i.e. the silver miners, and that in and of itself would be the retail side forcing the global price of silver higher, right? So instead of retail having to pay a $9 or $10 premium over spot, you'd see premiums, quote unquote, normalize, or certainly the premiums would narrow considerably between what the real price should be and what retail has to pay to get the end product, right? Isn't that how capitalism works, supply and demand?
You'd think so. I mean, and there's a lot of places in the silver supply chain where that should be working. Like, for example, I don't know. I actually am planning to call Perth Mint today or tomorrow to see what I can find out.
Today, mate. Is that how they answer the phone there?
We'll find out soon enough. We'll have John Adams from Australia on the show tomorrow. But I mean, it's the same thing.
Named after the president, the U.S. president?
I will let you ask the question live on the air when we talk. You can dig into that.
Middle name Quincy?
Wow, look at you on fire today, big boy. You missed having that solo airtime, so you brought which I appreciate. But stay focused here, buddy, because it's the same thing. We're seeing these reports that people aren't getting filled because Perth Mint is sending silver to fill COMEX demand, which seems like a really sturdy,
It's not the first time that's happened with the.
Why does COMEX need to get metal from halfway around the world to meet their demand? Is a whole other question.
Well, maybe that's maybe they consider the Perth Mint silver bar inventory part of their eligible inventory. And so they call up the Perth Mint and say, hey, send us some bars. We need to register them and deliver them. I don't know. I can't remember exactly when, but I seem to recall, I want to say either in 2010 or some point in the past, there were reports again,
It was last year that was happening.
that the Perth Mint was sending gold bars to the COMEX. So of course they denied it, and I saw that they denied that there's a problem with their unallocated silver program. I saw a news report, I think this morning, that they denied it. So if they deny it 2 more times, then we know it's a fact, right?
Well, actually, I may have it pulled up, or I'll share it in another episode soon. But the guy that they said was the owner of the chief of the Perth Mint, he did an interview on this Australian radio show the other day, and I'm sitting there listening. I wasn't familiar with him before, and I hear various things. So it's a little, going in with my detective mindset. And I mean, I don't have the full information, although he was saying, to my knowledge, the Perth Mint has not defaulted on anyone. I'm like, what do you mean to your knowledge? If you're the guy running it, but then the other thing that struck me as odd is that the interviewer asked him, so what's going on with the increased demand? And he kind of that was when I started thinking something felt off, because he went with the Jeff Curry routine. He was like, well, they had the Reddit boards got these people excited after GameStop. And it's like, if you're the head of the Perth Mint, I mean, that just sounded odd, where it's like, if you say like, hey, I think people are buying more silver than the money printing accounts for, and they think it's going to go up too quickly. But it's like, you have Janet Yellen talking about going big. 40% of the dollars were printed in the last year. I mean, we're past Weimar Germany. And the only answer he gave there was, oh, well, I hear these Reddit rascals are just. So I don't know. Hopefully we'll get someone on. I'm not there. I'm just going by the reports I hear and trying to find information. What have you heard, and what do you think?
Honestly, I haven't spent a lot of time trying to crack the code here of what's going on. I mean, I've banged my head against in that exercise. I banged my head against the wall many times over the last 20 years. And so, you know what? I just let you guys do the heavy lifting in that area, and then I can look at what you guys dig up and decide for myself if I think there's some meat on the bones there, or it's just hearsay type stuff. So, what I would like to do,
look at the wise old samurai getting me to whitewash his U.S. Mint and Perth Mint fences for him. Cleverly done.
I'm the gray-haired grizzled veteran here. So what I will say is really the cohort that should be pissed off about the difference between what retail is willing to pay for millions of ounces of silver and what is being paid, at the production and distribution level. The silver miners, they're the ones who are getting screwed. I mean, they're getting paid, presumably somewhere near spot for the silver concentrate that they ship to the refiners for processing, right? And that would suggest they're getting paid, I don't know what, around probably 25, maybe a slight discount to $25 an ounce. And yet there's millions of ounces, there's demand for millions of ounces at $35 an ounce, because that's the premium. And I actually, unrelated to this conversation, I was just surfing around the big coin dealers, and I mean, the premiums had looked like they were starting to come in earlier this week, but they're back up, right?
Like your convertible Tesla, hair blowing in the wind, surfing around to the coin shop.
Yeah, something like that. Tesla, I don't think Tesla makes it convertible except when the roof flies off the Model Y.
Can we get like your house and car equipped with some cameras, so we could just have Dave Cam and people could buy a subscription to see like what Dave does in the Silverland all throughout?
No one would give a shit.
I would watch.
So, I mean, at any rate, I mean, the silver miners, especially the primary silver miners, they're the ones who are really getting screwed by this manipulation. And, I know Pan American Silver, I know those guys don't believe the market's manipulated and they turn a blind eye to the whole thing. But a lot of the other silver mining companies, obviously with Keith Neumeyer at the forefront, they understand what's going on. These guys should be withholding their production. And that would immediately correct the problem that we're seeing.
Well, it's a great question. I was actually talking with someone from a company I'll leave nameless the other day, but one of the larger silver companies, mentioning exactly what you're talking about. I would summarize it as he was saying kind of like, yeah, I've heard that and it seems weird, but it's like, what can you do about it? I mean, and I can understand that to some degree. Dude. I mean, I'm sitting here submitting evidence to the CFTC. I can't even get them to acknowledge it. So, at the same time, what can they do about it? At least that discussion of what are the options. I've spoken with several of them, and let's just say there's an ongoing discussion, and we will leave it at that. But I've found that the ones I've spoken with, there's a lot of interest.
And I mean, if some of these companies need the cash flow, from, producing it, they need the immediate cash flow. If they stockpile their silver, they can get it financed, and rates are so low, you're not going to get that much of it. You're not going to take much of a haircut to the market value of it, or the fake market value of it, we should say. So, and there's probably guys out there who'd be willing to finance it. I don't even know if anyone's thought of that idea. I mean, I bet Eric Sprott, if some of the big silver miners went to him and said, hey, here's what we think's going on. This is how we think we can help correct the situation. Would you be willing to finance our stockpile?
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, and I will just leave it at there are discussions of things going on about that and making sure they're done.
The whole thing's absurd. And, honestly, part of what's affected the price of silver is this massive effort to push down the price of gold. And this, I'm actually surprised at how well silver's held in there versus gold. And I kind of felt that we were going to get a manipulated sell-off in the price of gold ahead of the FOMC meeting and, the powwow today that Yellen and Powell had before Congress, because they're greasing the skids for another big, massive dose of money printing. And that this is what always happens.
Silver now.
This is what always happens when they're getting ready for another big dose of money printing. They push down the price of gold. We saw that in 2008. We saw that in February, March of 2020. So honestly, I think, and again, I think the market's going to snap back quickly at some point. I don't know when. I mean, obviously, we're getting closer to that point, but part of what's going to cause the big snapback, in my opinion, is the fact that there's a shortage of gold and silver at the physical level. And as Andy Schechtman's been talking about, it definitely appears to me that there's an even worse, more severe problem with gold. I mean, if you go to the same, the usual national coin dealers, including Miles Franklin, the premiums on gold eagles, and a lot of the dealers don't have a lot of different gold products, but on the gold eagles that they do have, the premium's close to $200 again. And that premium started to come in, because I looked at it on Monday and it was a smaller premium. It was down to like 170, and now you're back up almost to $200 an ounce. So that alone tells you that, the price that we're seeing when you look at your screen is a manipulated, artificially low price. And there will be snapback. It's going to bite them in the ass at some point. I just don't know when. I don't think anyone can honestly say they know when.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stay on sooner than later, as specific as that may be.
Yeah, of course, you and I would do that. I don't want to commit to a specific, I'm not going to say, the Monday after Easter, we're going to see a snapback.
Monday after Easter, his subconscious says. We'll keep that in mind. Although, Dave, keep in mind, I don't think I told you this yet. We can talk a bit more about it offline. But I did call the U.S. Mint last week to just see if there was any way to find out what's going on. And they gave me an email. She made it sound like they would actually bring someone to do an interview on the show. So let's keep
You
track
want
of.
to you just want to fill the airwaves with BS propaganda?
I want to ask them some of the questions that we're talking about here. Um,
Yeah, why don't ask them directly? Why don't you guys just go to the refiners and tell them you need supply? What price do I need to pay to bring out more supply?
Well, that's what we're going to do, baby. So you can write down any of your other questions. And if someone comes on, that's the whole point, to run. And I mean, I don't know what will ultimately happen, but at least the rep that I spoke with the other day, she seemed friendly and actually like they would want to do it to clear up. I was asking about some of the different stories I've heard over different points in time, and saying I just want to get good information out to people. She seemed like said to email them and they would set it up. So I will do
I
that. And
man,
maybe they'll come on.
I hope you can get someone on there and give me a day heads up so I can go and stock up on popcorn.
I will let you know, just save some silver for the rest of us. But I would say, that was kind of what you're saying. I agree. Although that was the same thing I thought. I almost talked myself out of asking Bart Chilton to do the interview. So key lesson, always ask the question, which actually I learned, fortunately in a positive way, because I'd met Jim Rogers a couple of times back when I was still trading options on the New York Stock Exchange, and he would come there for his CNBC interviews. And actually, I just finished reading one of his books, so I went over to talk to him, and he pulls an ounce of silver out of his pocket. He's like, said something like, "Sonny boy, this is what you want." Well, that was great because this must have been 2010. It was right after I bought my 1,000-ounce blocks. I was like,
Did he really say that to you?
Yeah, he pulled a silver coin out and said something about silver, and I was already hooked by then. And so I told him, like, yeah, I just bought a 1,000-ounce block a month or two ago.
You should email him. Get his email from the Wall Street Silver guys, because they had him on. He'll come on your show. I mean, you have a huge audience.
The story here, Dave. I thought the same thing a couple of years ago when I was first started doing the interviews. I'm a little nervous and new at this. I mean, it's before I had big time guests like Dave Kranzler from Investment Research Dynamics.
Stop right now. I'm going to walk out of here.
So I remember I wondered, I'm like, oh, I've met him. I mean, can I email him? Am I bothering him or whatever? So I emailed him. He's a really nice guy. Wrote right back, said, sure, when. And we did the interview. And I remember hung up. It was on Skype. Went to get something from the kitchen. I come back and it was like 2 minutes later. And he wrote back, gee, that was a lot of fun. Sure hope to do that again. I was like, holy Jesus. Jim Rogers just said he had fun. And that was, I remember very clearly that night, the lesson of just ask people respectfully and you never know. So we will see. Hopefully we'll get someone from the Mint. And again, I'd love to get someone from the Perth Mint. I don't, I'm just trying to get information and we'll see how that goes. Although, Dave, another question about what you mentioned earlier regarding silver. As we talked about how the price has been hammered, at least from Ted Butler's most recent column, he seemed to indicate that the speculative funds, basically they got pretty washed out. So it looked to him as if there's not really, because it's like if they're going back and forth, they need the tech funds to sell. And, as we've seen, and I think Ted has had a good handle on that in the last couple of years, there has been the degree to which, you see whether the banks are long or short. Anything you can touch on there? Maybe agree or disagree, but what do you think about that? Is there anyone left to sell to if they keep hammering? I mean, is there anyone they can get to sell? The banks need somebody else to get them to sell so they can buy it back. Am I getting that clearly now?
I beg to differ that the tech funds are getting washed out. I mean, or the hedge funds. I mean, I'm looking at the latest COT report, and it shows still a net long position of 15,000 contracts. And if you add in the other reportables between those two categories of trader, you're talking about 25,000 contracts of net long. I think, and I think before the market kind of bottomed and started higher in late 2015, you remember that. I think the managed money trader category was actually net short for a while in silver. And that's, we may be headed in that direction because, as of the last Commitment of Traders report, they added 1,683 contracts to their short position, and they only sold 49 contracts. So I wouldn't call it washed out yet. And I don't know how he decides who in the managed money category, what's a CTA fund and what's a hedge fund, because that data is simply not available. And you can't decipher that just by looking at the number of, the open interest held by the indicated number of largest traders. So, you got, the 4 largest and I think, and the 8 largest. You can't tell which ones are CTA. No one, I mean, they might know behind the scenes at the COMEX, but he doesn't know. And what is interesting though is the swap dealers now are net short only 5,000 contracts. And at the same time, when the last time when the hedge funds went net short, the swap dealers were net long. And if we could be at a bottom now, and these numbers, without the swap dealers getting net long and the hedge funds getting net short, we could be at a bottom now. We could move higher starting tomorrow. I don't know. We may have started moving higher starting today. But once the swap dealers, i.e. the banks, start to go net long, that's when you want to start to definitely, if you're holding off to, hopefully find the bottom of the market and put more money to work there, that's when you want to start putting money to work. So.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I guess maybe you can have a rally without silver necessarily breaking 30 or 40 or 50, but I will unofficially say
from where we are now, you could go to
near
20,
the bottom.
Where we are now, you could go to 29 and it'd be a nice percentage rally, right?
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I'd say that seems a lot more likely to me than going down another $3, but
I don't see how the physical market would allow them to go down another $3.
I would agree, and that actually was nicely telepath, because here is our next slide. This is the COMEX Depository Warehouse Silver Stocks, which I know you will say to take with a grain of salt, and I'll agree. Although just interesting here from the beginning of February, it looks like it actually touched 400 million ounces, and then today we're down to 370.76. So any thoughts on that one, sir?
Oh, I mean, I don't trust the exact numbers, but I think when you see a trend like that over time, it reflects what's going on with the inventories. So certainly there's been a removal of bars from COMEX vaults, but who knows what form that might have taken? Because remember, Ronan dug up that letter on the CME website where they sent the letter to the CFTC and said, hey, our actual available silver is probably half. It could be up to half of what we're saying is available, right? Because they're counting eligible bars that are not necessarily eligible to ever be registered and delivered. So, that chart could just be adjusting for that, right? And saying, hey, we could get in trouble here if a lot of people all of a sudden look to remove their bars from the COMEX and they look and see our inventory report and see that on paper we have plenty of bars that can be made available for that when they actually don't. So whether that's adjusting for the accounting indiscretions at the CME, or whether it's actual bars that have been removed, is probably both. It's probably a little bit of both. And I would think it's probably more weighted towards bars that have been removed, because certainly, especially given the situation at the retail level, they have to make some silver available for these mints to produce some product, right? At least this time of year, it'd be too hard to come up with the cover story of, hey, we're retooling our dies for the 2022 Silver Eagles. That wouldn't fly.
Well, it will be a hoot to see how this one all shakes out. So Dave, I thank you again for your silvery knowledge. I'd like to mention, sir, your episode tonight was brought to us by Silver Viper Minerals, who I've seen in Dave Kranzler's Mining Stock Journal. Are we going to get
One of
an
my
update?
favorite junior. It's one of my favorite junior exploration stocks.
Oh yeah, Silver
Oh
Viper.
yeah,
I've
yes,
been
it
really
is.
impressed with Steve. I've been clearly mentioning they are a sponsor. So if somebody wants to consider me biased, knock yourself out. Although Dave, I believe you have no compensation or any business relationship with Silver Viper. So if you have anything you'd like to share before we wrap up tonight, here is their latest. Did you see their drill results from about a week or two ago?
What kind of question is that to ask me? You saw my latest mining stock journal. I would have.
I was trying to set you up to be like, well, as a matter of fact, Chris, I have, and let me tell you what you need to know. You're trying to work on your marketing angle here to sell some more journals for you, but
I'm not a marketing guy.
that's why I'm trying to help, but it's okay. Any comments you'd like to issue on the latest drill results for anyone who has not yet read your journal, but might be
I
interested?
I actually emailed Steve after I saw this news release. I'm like, because they first got a lot of attention when they had that massive discovery at El Ruby, the first discovery hole at El Ruby. And I mean, this one's maybe not quite as blockbuster as that, but this is a blockbuster drill hole that they're reporting here. And I asked him, I said, hey, are you getting some more interest from potential strategic partners, in response to this release? And he said, well, as a matter of fact, we're conducting a site visit right now. And that, meant not a site visit from some Bay Street mining stock analyst or a mutual fund investor. That's site, the implication is a site investor from a potential strategic investor. There's a handful of strategic investors, I'm sure, that are watching their drilling very closely. And that's the MO of the parent company that Steve works for, Belcaro. I mean, that's their MO. They go in and essentially they don't take on a project unless they're pretty confident they can get it advanced enough to attract a strategic buyer. And, I'm not saying that's going to happen anytime in the next 12 months, but then again, if the silver market heats up again and we start to see mid-30s silver, I bet you these guys will be snapped up like that. And it's not just the El Ruby. It's not just the El Ruby target zone where there's potentially, a mother lode of high-grade silver mineralization. I mean, they've got, all around the property, and I think in every direction, but for sure to the north, and I think to the east, they've got, massive, a massive number of targets that they can stick drill holes into, to see what's going on. I think this is potentially a very big silver resource.
Well, I appreciate
it. And the other thing that I like about it is, sorry, it's a lot of these silver projects down in Mexico are polymetallic gold, lead, zinc, and a lot of times silver is like in the minority in terms of the contained amount of silver in the total resource. These guys have a fair amount of silver gold mineralization, which is more attractive for me as an investor, because I focus on the monetary metals. I don't really give a shit about lead and zinc.
Yeah. Well, if anybody watching at home wants to invest like Dave and figure out how the pros do it, Dave, is there any way you can think of how people can stay posted on what's going on in the silver world with Silver Viper and all the other silver stocks? Anything you can think of, champ?
I know you're tossing me a meatball, a softball. Well, they can go to my website.
No, this was the part where we're going to talk about how to get you were buying people copies of Kane's book.
Me? No interest. No, they go to my website and there's a link there for
stuff.
Yeah. And you just go into the link and see what's offered, and I've had a lot of people over the last 12 months tell me I need to raise my price, but it is what it is for now.
I told you that 3 years ago, or probably
Well,
longer.
that's true
but
too. You're right, you did. I probably do need to raise the price at some point.
Dave, I don't know if I should tell you this. It's going to get you all riled up while I'm trying to wrap up here. But while we were doing this call, I got an alert pop up on my phone say houses in Austin selling for more over asking price than any major U.S. city. And you're going to be a little upset with me because I didn't tell you this, but 2 weeks ago, went out for a friend's birthday party. There were two real estate people there, and they were discussing how someone had just paid 300 grand over asking price on like a $600,000 house. It wasn't like, like an Esplanade or anything. And people are just flocking out of California, still coming here, bidding it up. And I know if I want to know more about that, Short Sellers Journal is the place to find it.
Yeah. And there are areas, Denver, Austin, probably Phoenix, wherever the Californians are flooding into and out of California from, wherever they're flooding into is where prices are going nuts. And we have the same problem here in Denver. So I wouldn't chase it, but that's me.
Well,
and I do discuss, in fact, I'm going to update the housing market because the existing home sales and the new home sales were way worse than Wall Street was looking for February. The reports came out earlier this week, and I'll be discussing those in my short sellers journal this weekend.
Well, I'll look forward to that. And Dave, actually, we have a comment from a super chat. Thank you, Conrad, for that kind donation. Mentioned something I guess we've gotten around, but not talked specifically about. He mentions apparently Melvin Capital's getting beat up on Wall Street bets. But Dave, have you heard anything? Somebody sent me something about they had a really large put position that they made a fortune on with First Majestic, I believe on the February 1st, 2nd thing, and which I would like to dig into more. Have you come across anything about that yet?
No, I haven't. I have not. But Melvin Capital is really Citadel now, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but I am going to look into that one a little bit more. Maybe some of the folks on some of these groups out there can check into that. I'll be digging in, and we can talk more about that offline, especially maybe for our next short position on First Majestic Roundtable. We can dig into that a bit more. Might be a good idea, perhaps.
Sure, I'd love to.
All right, so yeah, dig into that, and we'll kick up the panel again next Thursday, possibly. It'd be fun to explore and see what is going on there. And with that said, Mr. Kranzler, sure appreciate you being here. Sure appreciate everyone who has been watching along at home. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for Silver Viper for bringing us today's show. And with that said, we're going to wrap up, but I will see you again really soon. And take care.